Why is Bitcoin crashing today? Bitcoin fell below $90,000. Ethereum, XRP, Solana have all fallen by some tremendous numbers. And let me tell you, everything starts with the stock market. The S&P yet again today down roughly 1%. Officially, I should say that this is the end of yesterday, as the stock market is yet to open for today day, depending on when you're watching this video. But as can clearly be seen, almost every single major market is down. But we were promised a bull run this quarter. Q4 was supposed to be the time of the year. Now, let me just preface this all by saying that Q3 has actually been a pretty amazing quarter. And because it's been so good, with some volatility in the middle, let me tell you that. But because Q3 was so good, perhaps investors are looking at Q4 differently based on a few things. One of those, and I think one of the most interesting ones, comes in the form of tariffs. But in my opinion, one of the more interesting ones comes at AI. For example, AI has been absolutely bullish for just basically a year on end, it seems like. All the top companies that involve themselves with AI, most of Trump's investment thesis and strategy within big tech, have all been around AI. But many have been calling for the AI bubble to burst any one of these days. Well, since we saw a record-breaking Q3 AI time, is this the time for a slight pullback? And maybe not on its own. Maybe the bull run for AI is not over, but some sort of pullback would definitely not be too crazy. But more importantly, what if we combine that with other factors? First of all, are a lot of these companies able to get over the gains they made in Q3? It was such a wonderful quarter. Can they compete with what we saw back then? We had a lot of talks of tariffs in Q3. What will actually get finished out of all of this in Q4? I mean, if you guys remember, a few months ago and even just last month, Trump has been throwing around the tariff word like crazy. But really, the consequences of that have yet really to be seen. Now, of course, as we're estimating about when the consequences will be seen, it's quite hard to put a date on that. But what we do know is that China and the US will come to an agreement very shortly, and that the consequences of some earlier made tariffs will also have to come out rather shortly. Maybe people are starting to price that in more and more. Now, we've also broadly talked about the rate cuts and the odds of that also changing stock and crypto prices, Just recently here now, the idea of no rate cut for December has started to bring up a lot of money and a lot of volume, and this is actually quite negative for the market. But getting back to it, according to Bespoke Investment Group, when the S&P 500 is higher year to date through the end of Q3, in this case here plus 15% in Q3 or plus 50% in 2025, Q4 has averaged a plus 4.4% gain, with positive returns roughly 83% of the time, going back to 1928. Since 1990, the average Q4 gains is 6.1% when the index enters the final quarter of the year in positive territory, finishing the fourth quarter positive 88.5% of the time. And what I meant to say with that is, even though the start of Q4 has been quite negative, let me tell you that things can still turn around quite hard, and theoretically, if you're being very realistic about the situation, to all the crypto investors anxiously watching right now, if you're anxiously watching this video right now, make sure you press that like button. I want to see if this video can get above 500 likes, and I want y'all to remember, we're still all in this together. Crypto as a concept is quite large. It's not fully a PvP realm. It's not a matter of if you win, I can't win, or if I can't win, you can't win. We can all win together. And as I said before, many a times, right? I want every single one of you to do well. And what is the best? Where do we have the highest likelihood of doing well? By staying together, staying strong, and as I always say, staying positive. But staying positive can sometimes be hard when the market is against you, when the market is down, when hope seems to slowly fade away. But remember this, since 2017, Bitcoin has seen more than 10 declines of 25% or more, 6 declines of 50% or more, and 3 declines of 75% or more. Every single decline of the current magnitude or more since Bitcoin's inception has been followed by new record highs. Disruption is not easy, but it pays when you can sound out the noise. This is a routine crypto bear market, which we believe is already closer to its end than its beginning. Volatility brings opportunity. And that post basically came as a response to an earlier post by this party who said, it's safe to say that crypto just experienced its 2025 bear market. Bitcoin down 30% from its highs of October, Ethereum down more than 40% from its highs of October. But it's just a month. So to me, this doesn't really mean too much. However, since October 6th, in 42 days, crypto has erased $1.2 trillion in market cap, or about 28% of its entire value. That is pretty crazy. However, I will remind you that the worst case scenarios, if you're in a really, really bad spot, right? The worst case scenario for the crypto market ever. Let's take a look at this. If we take a look at the bear market of 2021, right? It was roughly, let's see here, about 210 days of down before the market picked itself back up again. This is for Ethereum. I just want you guys to realize that people use this bear market term a little bit too loosely, because in reality, we have yet to break through some of the old lows. And if we take a look at the previous bull run here as well, right? Just because we hit a top, went down significantly, doesn't mean we don't just see another top quickly afterwards. This time period, most people also consider the bear market. But then what is this whole time period, right? But even if we were to consider this the bear market, which is also what I would say it was, then you can still understand that if you just religiously buy your way down and you don't give up, you keep holding through, record highs would have followed, maybe not pretty quickly afterwards, but they would have followed regardless. And more importantly, because if you bought your way down, your average price for ETH, if you started at 5,000-ish, let's say like 4,800, and you bought all the way towards $800, maybe your average price would have been roughly $1,600 or so, double the bottom. Then pretty quickly you'd be in profit, and pretty quickly, right, maybe like a little bit over a year after that, you'd be in a few 100% worth of profit. And to some, this may sound like nothing or not worth the time, but if you're playing with significant sums of money, doubling, tripling, or quadrupling your money on a top cryptocurrency, not a small cap, I mean a currency that has hundreds of billions of dollars in it, that's pretty freaking solid. If we're talking about MicroStrategy, for example, right? They've got tens of billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. If you have $100 in it, I understand that just doubling it might not move the needle for you too much. But with MicroStrategy, because they've got themselves, let's say, $70 billion worth of BTC, if they double that because of their continuous buying efforts over a year or two, that's going to be one of the most profitable companies in the world at that point. And that's also what I described plenty of times for these sovereign wealth funds. They're not here to 50x their portfolios or 50x their investments overnight. They're here because it's a different area. These Bitcoin, these crypto investments, they're a different sector, high growth potential, high gain potential, but still, right, at least to me, doubling the money in a few years would be absolutely phenomenal for them because it beats almost any other investment that they have done or could do. One counter to that would be that the top 7 right now of the S&P 500, the top companies have actually been putting up some record-breaking numbers. And that's why it becomes so interesting when you take a look at the full-on S&P, because in reality, the index ain't really doing that well. You saw the numbers of today. And if you're taking a look at the rest, currently, just 25% of the S&P's industry group are trading above their 10-week moving average, the lowest share since April sell-off. This means just 6 out of the 25 sub-industries are still holding above that level. This percentage has declined 60 points over the last few weeks. And as a result, about 44% of the S&P's 500 stocks are trading above their 50-day moving average, one of the lowest readings since April. As at this point, market participation is declining. And I'll say it one more time, guys. If you've not done it yet, make sure you go ahead and press the like button on this video. At the time of recording, our yesterday's video is at about 190, now 191 likes. Let's get today's video to at least beat that, all right? So make sure you press that button and let's move on. Now, if we're taking a look at the monthly returns for Bitcoin, for XRP, for ETH, one thing that becomes quite apparent is that this, right, October and November have been atrocious. Matter of fact, we're in one of the worst Novembers ever for Bitcoin, just ever, right? Even the numbers we set for October is basically the 3rd worst ever that we set for Bitcoin. And even though Q4 right now also is the 2nd worst we've ever had for the index, the only time being worse is in 2018. It's the worst ever, right? I want to quickly remind y'all that when we saw our worst quarter ever, Q4 of 2018, pretty quickly afterwards, this is all in peak bear market territory, right? You can see here, minus 50% at the start of the year, minus 40% end of the year, plus 9% the next quarter. That's, not too shabby, just kind of neutral, people would say. But then plus 160% the quarter after that. I want you to keep in mind, a similar thing happened here. We had a bad Q3 in 2019, a bad Q4 in 2019, minus 22, minus 13.5%. Oh, my days. We had even a bad Q1 of 2020 with the whole COVID situation, right? And then pretty quickly afterwards, bam, plus 42% in a quarter, 20% in a quarter, which is still pretty nice to see. But then right after that, plus 170% in a quarter. And then right after that 170% quarter, we saw a plus 103% quarter. Then a good little correction before another quarter of pretty juicy 25% gains before, again, the bear market started for a couple quarters, about 4. Before then, the bull market started again. And here's the funny thing. Usually bull markets last about 3 years. We keep on saying that right now we are getting closer and closer towards the end. We think another sprint of sorts has to be done. That could change, of course, if the stock market doesn't want to participate, if the stock market doesn't want to join along. But I just wanted to quickly set a reminder that there's only been 1 year where we basically had only negative. You can see here, 2022, 1, 2, 3, 4 bad quarters in a row. If we're taking a look at the weekly returns as well, this has been one of the worst months, rolling months, let's call it, for Bitcoin, with 4 weeks of decline in a row. I've done some quick scouting through. Right, just me here scrolling through. I can see one section of 5 weeks in a row of losses back in 2014. This is 4. So here we got another 4. We got another 4. Got another 4. Another 4. 4. I'm just quickly scrolling through here, but it is really very, very rare actually to get 5 weeks in a row. Here, one time in 2022, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right, so that's definitely an outlier there. Here we got one 5er, and let's see, we have another, but this is 2014. I'm not sure if we can fully count that in comparison to right now having, the president on board, the biggest companies in the world on board. But let's just say that we have one outlier in 2022. And for the rest, really, it's roughly 4 weeks of decline. That's like at the top of it. 5 weeks is really the anomaly. And, well, I guess we've seen once being worse. But from that perspective, you also got to realize that what we're witnessing right now is very, very, very negative. All right, let's call it very, very, very bad. Anyway, let me know down below if you were able to buy Bitcoin below $90,000 today. And let me tell you this as well. As it currently stands, Bitcoin is really quite cheap. We always have this yellow line that we look at for when Bitcoin is oversold or in a cheap spot. And the reason I am becoming more of an aggressive buyer than usual is because of the massive multiple week decline, multiple month, let's call it decline, we've now seen for Bitcoin that has priced it well below where I think a fair value should be. Right now, the prices we are seeing, I really would consider not necessarily the lowest Bitcoin can go, right? If we're talking about the previous bottom, even 77,000 could be in the works. But let's just say we are at an extremely low price where buying makes more sense than selling. If you wanted to sell, you're basically a month too late, right? It's already fallen roughly 30% from that top. And here's the kicker. We've been screaming very, very loud on this channel that a 30% move can always happen in the bull market. Because of what we saw back in earlier 2025, we saw the market move down 30%. What we saw earlier right here in 2024, let's see it, we moved down roughly 30%. We saw it all the way back here, right, in 2021, where the market moved down roughly 50% or so. The thing is, it cannot keep moving down forever. If you have a stronger bias towards buying because you realize we're either going to zero or to the moon, at the end you should be fine. Regardless, I wanted to make a video here explaining about why the Fed messed us all up, or at least why that could be something happening. But to another extent, I'm thinking, you know what? I don't even really know anymore how much of this is all connected to the Fed or how much this is just a manipulation game from other parties. Let me just tell you this, though. Tomorrow, we've got FOMC minutes coming up. You might want to watch it, especially if you're a person believing in the theory that this is all to do with the Fed and inflation rate. Pretty quickly afterwards, the day after, we've got ourselves non-farm payrolls, unemployment rate, which of course is an interesting one right now because, well, there is no unemployment rate. And throughout the week, or actually a little bit, about a week from now, we've got ourselves some more numbers coming up, none of which I really care about too much, but hey, these are some of the most interesting numbers the U.S. will give out, and they're happening exactly 1 week from now. And mind you, like I said earlier in the video, that as it currently stands, it seems that Bitcoin, XRP, ETH, Solana, you name it. Every crypto is just following along with the major indices, with the major stocks. And right now, for example, for the S&P, we've got elevated stock valuations presenting another risk for investors. It's changed from investors mostly being bullish on these major stocks because of AI, because of everything, to being more skeptical, more scared of a correction or a bear market on, again, stocks and major indices. The S&P 500's forward price to earnings ratio is approaching levels rarely seen in history, leaving less room to weather downside surprises in our view. And yes, when you start taking a look at almost all the numbers, all the moving averages and everything, we are so overbought. Same thing happened to gold recently. We are overbought in almost every single industry, and that's making people more and more suspicious, more and more scared. I'm never scared, but that's because I realize the numbers, which is these declines are normal. It's not that crazy. If you had bought into these declines like a maniac, sure, it would have been really, really annoying at the start, at the middle, but in the end, you would have won. And I see comments of people saying, this is the 10,000th dip. I don't got stamina to handle dips no more. I understand all of you. But then remember as well that nobody said it was going to be easy. Sometimes, matter of fact, it's going to get so tough that you think about giving up. And that's the point where, at the end of the day, the victors are born. Some will give up. Many people will give up, matter of fact. I'm thinking right now, if we're a group of 100 men and women and whatever, others, how many will really be able to last through these market conditions? If it was 100, then there would be no opportunity because some have to give up for the others to thrive, right? But I don't want to sound that way. I don't want to make a video saying, hey guys, maybe you should give up so we can win. No, I definitely think that there's enough freaking food in this water for all us fish to swim in it, right? There's also sharks, there's also whales. We're none of those, right? We are the fish at the bottom, just feeding off the small little thingies there. But there's enough of those little crumbs sprinkled in the water so we can all survive. I don't want none of y'all to give up. I want you to realize the numbers, take a good look at the fact that we are so oversold right now, and that from almost any angle, it makes more sense to get in on this dip than to go against it. Can I guarantee you anything? No, but this is my thesis. This is what I'm going for. And I really hope that over the next few months, we'll turn out victorious. And if we don't, hey, and we actually go all the way back to where it's like $77,000, I'll be kissing my teeth. I'll be looking at my screen, but at least I freaking tried. And as long as the leverage is not too crazy, you've got some wiggle room, it should all be okay. And that's why I keep continuing to buy that dip. That's why my trades right now are hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in the red. Just on Bluefin here alone, my one XRP trade has turned from plus 400,000 to minus 110,000. So we're down $500,000 on just this trade. My overall accounts are down tremendously, but here's the kicker. It's always like that before it gets to the highest point ever, and I've gotten used to it, so it's okay. Regardless, that was it for today's little crypto update. Make sure you press that like button if you enjoyed the video. Let me know down below if you think we are in a bull or a bear market, and I'll see you guys again in another crypto video somewhere, most likely later today.